Hi and welcome to today's video here on the Event Lighting channel. This video is for absolute beginners. This is for GrandMA3 beginners. It can be if you never touched a lighting console before and you're just interested in seeing how this works. We're going to go through the entire GrandMA3 system. Also, if you are transferring from another console, say Camsys, Holehawk, etc, whatever, this is also an introduction into the GrandMA3 system which you might find interesting. We're going to cover a lot of topics. I'm going to show you how you can download the OnPC software to your own computer, how you can start working with it at home. Then we're going to cover a lot of different things, how you can save show, load show, how you can work with sessions, how you can patch your fixtures, how you can set everything up into 3D, how you can program sequences, how you can use Swipeys, which is a new concept in GrandMA3. We're going to talk about how you configure your displays, how you can create windows and views, how you can create groups in an easy way, how you can use a show creator to create groups. I mean, there's so many different things we're going to cover. We're going to go into sequences, how we program cues, how we control the timing of cues, how we can do split timing of cues, how we can use MATricks to make our programming easier, how we can also use MATricks on top of phasers. So we're going to start working a little bit with phasers as well. So we can make circle effects, we can make dimmer effects and all kinds of things like that. We're also going to cover something called the selection grid, which is a brand new concept in GrandMA3. So this is just some of the things we're going to cover in this video. I put chapter markers down in the description, so if there's some topic you are not really interested in, you can skip from topic to topic. You don't have to watch the entire video. But having said all that, let's just get right into GrandMA3 for beginners. The first thing you want to do is head over to MALighting.com. I have it open here on my computer, and that is the MA3, or the MA website basically. All the resources for GrandMA2, GrandMA1, GrandMA3 .2 is all in here, and you can download software and you can do whatever and find online manuals and everything. The first thing I want to talk about is basically the system requirements for downloading the OnPC. The system requirements is here. You can go into the manual and you can look it up. You can simply search for requirements and this page will pop up. And of course your computer needs to meet these requirements, otherwise it's going to be difficult for you to start learning GrandMA3. Once you have checked that out, we are ready to start downloading the software. The software for GrandMA3 is free. You can download it for Windows and you can download it for Mac. It has exactly the same functionality, so it's up to you and your preference what you want to use. To download the software, we head over to the main page of the MA3 or the MALighting website, and then you go into downloads up here and you can see you have all the different resources down here. Let's go into GrandMA3 and you can see down here we have software and release notes. If you click that one, you can see the current release. There's a new software out just a day ago. Yesterday it came out, 2.2.5.0, which was a bug fix for 2.2. So we are eager to try that out. You can see here the release notes if you want to see what changed since the last software update. You have the software for the consoles, like if you have a real console like I have here in the background, if you have processing units, nodes, all these different pieces of GrandMA3 equipment, this is the software you want to use for that. We have the OnPC software here for Windows, which is what we're going to download in a second. We have the GrandMA3 software here for Mac OS, if you are a Mac user. Down here we have software for the WSKey, if you want to use an external visualizer like WYSIWYG or Depends or Capture or whatever. You can connect GrandMA3, but you need this piece of hardware to make it work. Down here, if you are on one of the consoles with a built-in computer like the Command Wing XT, for instance, you will use this software to recover the whole system. You can see it's 5.7 gigabytes, and that is because there's a Windows installation part of that as well. So if you want to like format your Compact XT, you want to use this software. If you want to use older software, you have this archive down here, and you can see all the previous versions of GrandMA3 if you are looking for a specific software. But in this case, we want to start with the GrandMA3 software for Windows, or I will anyway. You can click this and you can download it, and of course I have downloaded it already. But if you want to follow along at home, you can download the software here, and we can start looking at the GrandMA3 software. While the software is downloading, we could have a look at the GrandMA3 manual. If we are on the MA website, or MALighting's website, you can see up here we have online manuals. If you click that one here, you can see the GrandMA3 user manual. If you click that one, you come into the GrandMA3 user manual. The GrandMA3 user manual is online. You can always find a version of it. It's always updated with the new versions of software. They release new versions like once every 2 months or something, bug fixes and new features and all this stuff. The user manual is also built into every piece of software, and I'll show you that later when we take our first walkthrough through the GrandMA3 software. Just know that it's here. It's very nice and handy. If you want to know anything about something, let's say we want to know something about networking, you can go in and have a look at all the different topics they have in here. You can go in and look at sessions. You can go in and look at all kinds of different things. The manual is quite valuable, and you will be able to help yourself by looking in the manuals. You don't have to ask on internet forums for everything. It's a very good way to look in the manual, and that will also teach you like how GrandMA3 works. So let's say we are ready. We looked at the system requirements and the manuals and all this stuff, and we downloaded the OnPC software for Mac or Windows, and we are ready to start up the software for the first time. And you can see here we have a icon up here. If I double click that one, it's going to open up a terminal window. It's going to take a few seconds, and then the software is going to start up. As you can see, it started up with Learn GrandMA3 for Beginners. I created that file not too long ago, and I will show you in a minute how you can create new files and how you can store and make sure your files are safe. But first of all, I just want to take a quick look around the software so you have an idea of what is what and where stuff is. So first of all, we have this on-off symbol up here. If you click this one, you can shut down the software, you can restart the software, you can lock the software, and that is the same as locking the screens. You can press this button up here and the software is now locked. So if you are in a venue or something, it's a good idea to lock your screens so nobody can change anything. You unlock it with the pause or break button on your keyboard. And if you don't have a pause or break button, you can click the 4 corners. You can say 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will also unlock the software. So it's not like a lock with a code or anything. It's just locking the screen so outsiders can't do any changes in your software. The next icon up here is the menu button. That is the equivalent of pressing the menu button on your console, and we'll get into how that works in a second. I just want to show you this is where you go in if you want to patch or mess with the connector configuration, network and DMX protocols and all these different things. If you want to go in and work with the backup menu and loading new shows and stuff like that, that is all within the menu button up here. The next one here is the command section, and the command section is exactly the same as you see over here on a real console. It has exactly the same like the numeric keypad and all the shortcut buttons for doing programming, changing pages, going into highlight and all these different things. You will find that here in the command section, and that is, as I said, exactly the same as you see over here on a real console. The next one is our master controls. You can mess with the Grandmaster, World Master, Highlight, Rate Masters, Speed Masters, all kinds of different things. And while it could be fun to start playing around in here, I will encourage you to leave this alone for now until you know why you would need to change something in here. There's no need to change anything in here right now. You can do that later. And once you progress as a programmer, you will feel the need for changing stuff in here, and then slowly learning what the different faders do and why you want to mess with them. But for now, just leave it as is, because otherwise you might experience like your effects are not running correctly, or their timing is off, or your programming time is weird and stuff like that. So for now, know it's here, but don't mess with it if you don't know exactly why you are in here. The next one here is our custom master section, and here you can also change speed masters and different things. And it's kind of the same as the other page. Don't go in here and don't mess around with it if you don't know why you're in here. There's no need to change all the settings in here, because it might affect your programming later on and you might not know why. So be careful with these things up here. Just know that they're there. The next one here is our playbacks. Our playbacks is basically our 15 faders. We have 15 faders here on a GrandMA3 Lite. And these 15 faders are represented in here. So this fader will be the same as the first one here on my console, and so on for all of them. You can see they have these small numbers: 101, 102, 201, 301, and 401, and we'll get into how that works later when we start programming and we start working with the playback section. But it's here, and it works the same. If you assign something here and you load your show file into a real console, it will be working, and it will be exactly the same as working on a real console. The last one here is our encoder bar control, where we can go in and look at different options. You can change stuff in here, kind of the same way as you do down here in the banks down here. I rarely use this. You can use it if you are on a web remote. It will be kind of this way it looks on a web remote. But let's continue. The last one down here is our displays, and our displays, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different displays. And if you look at a console, let's say we have our GrandMA3 full size here. This over here will always be display number 1. Display number 1 is what we are looking at right now. You can see we have our encoders down here, and if I change something here, you can see position, color, dimmer, beam. So when you start programming, this is where you do it. And if you look at this letterbox screen here, you can see it contains the same encoders as you see over here. So screen number 1 is this section, including the letterbox screen. If you have a smaller console without letterbox screens, let's go down to our Compact XT here, for instance. You can see we don't have any letterbox screens on the smaller consoles. But this is still display number 1, and you can see the encoder bar just moved up here. And that means we have a little bit less screen real estate on the smaller consoles, but it's still screen number 1. So if we go back to the full size and we continue and we look at the screens here again, you can see screen number 2 obviously is this one, including the playback settings down here. Screen number 3, if you are on a full size, is that section over here. If you are not on a full size console, if you configure anything here on screen number 3, it will be on this part of the full size, but if you're on a light consoles, obviously you can't see it. So that is the limitation. You can see the E4 and E5 here, that's external screen, basically external screen number 1 and external screen number 2. And you can connect behind the console, you can connect external screens as well with touch displays, and then you can use those guys as well. S, 6 and 7 are the small screens down here, where you can, if you are on a GrandMA3 Lite or a GrandMA3 full size, you have these smaller screens down here, and you can see on my console here I have these small screens. I don't know if you can see it, but if you are on full size and a Lite, you have these screens. If not, you don't, but you can configure your screens to work anyway. So you don't need that screen, or you don't need those screens. They are just nice to have, but this is where you configure them. You can see if I click this one, it's much smaller. and that is because it's designed for a much smaller screen down here. So that's basically how the screens work in GrandMA3. Just know that you're always on screen number 1 if you are on OnPC. If you want to open screen number 2, you can do so, and you can drag it to your second display or your third display if it's screen number 3, and that will work as well. So everything you do in the GrandMA3 software, all the programming you do, all the definition of screens and all that stuff will work if you load your show into a real console. You can build an entire show. There's no limitation in the OnPC software. You can build everything on your OnPC at home, bring it out to a live situation, load it into a console, and everything will work as you expect it to. So that's a huge bonus for the OnPC software. Besides all these settings over here, we have the last one down here. If I click this one, you can see we open basically part of the playback section. This represents not the first 15 faders, but the first 10 faders. We can close this one again, and we can go into screen number 2. And you can see here we have all 15 faders represented. And that is exactly the same as this one, the small letterbox screen over here on the real console. You can see it here. This letterbox screen is exactly the same as you see here. So anything you put on a fader here on the real console, you can see that matches the screen up here. So you can define anything here on the OnPC software. If we close screen number 2 again, we can go back to screen number 1. You can see we have some views over here. If you click on these presets over here or views over here, you can see we change the content of what's on the screen. These views are basically predefined from MALighting. They have predefined these views for us, but we can delete them if we want to, and we can build our own, we can change them, we can do whatever we want. But compared to MA1 and MA2, when you loaded a new show, everything was empty. You had to define all of your views by yourself. So it can be quite helpful to use the built-in views that MA supported for you or made ready for you. You don't have to do it, and we'll look at how we define windows and how we can change stuff around in the views later in this video. So this, I think, completes a walk around, the first walk around of the software. The software is amazing. It can do all kind of crazy things in your programming. But this is just a brief overview of what we got. The last thing I want to mention is the small question mark down here. If you click that one, you can see it says help, and if you say please or enter, it's going to open up the help menu. As I explained before, the online manual is built into every console, so you can basically just press help and it's going to open it up. You can also just type it out. We can say help and we can say ArtNet like this, and it's going to open the help menu and it's going to go straight in and put in a search topic, and then you can go down and see some of the things you want to learn about. So if there's something you can't figure out, if there's some topic you need to know more about, you just say help and the topic name. It could be Phasers, it could be ArtNet, Streaming HN, whatever, patch. This is the way you can get help on the console, and it's always built into the software, so it's there when you need it. When we have opened the software for the first time, we might want to load a show, we might want to create a new show, we might do something. And the way that works is you go up into the menu up here. Again, it's the same as pressing the menu button. You can see it down here on the real console. You press this guy up here and we open up the menu. And we can go into backup here, and backup is where all the loading of previous shows, creating new shows, saving, changing names, deleting shows, all that is in here. So let's say we want to load a show. I can click load show and you can see it loads some of the previous shows I've had on this console. You can see the internal up here. If you have different show files or if you have different versions of GrandMA3, you will actually have them as separate installations on your OnPC. And if I click this one, you can see I go down to a previous version. In my previous version I had much more show files, many more show files. You can click to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, depending on how many installations you have of GrandMA3 on your software. You can also click and hold this one, and it's going to open up all the options you have, and that is something we will talk about later, how that works, and we actually can click and hold. We can right click and we can use something called Swipeys. We'll get into that later on how that works. But let's say we don't want to load a show here. Let's say we want to create a new show. We say menu, we say backup. We can go into new show here, and it's going to ask you for giving it a show name. You can define over here how many of the settings you want to change. If you have some local settings, some IP addresses, some different preferences and all that stuff, you can clear that. You can clear your output stations, which is like the DMX configuration of your console, and you can clear DMX protocols, which would be ArtNet settings, streaming ACN settings, and stuff like that. So if you want to create a new show, you can check everything here. You can say new show. Do we want to save the old one? Well, we do. And here we actually created a new show. You can see the naming up here is kind of weird. So if we go in and we say backup, we can say save as or save to internal. Save to internal will just save it as is. So if you click that one, it's the equivalent of just making a backup on your console. Save as will ask you if you want to change the name. If you are in a programming environment, you might want to change your file to version 1, 2, 3, 4 during the day. You can do that up here. So we can say new show, for instance, version 1, and we can say save. Do you really want to intentionally change your show name? Let's say okay. So now you can see we have a new show name up here. New show, it's the same show, we just created a new file with a new name, basically. We still have the old version of it, but now we also have a new version. So it's a good idea to do during the day. If you want to delete shows, you can go in here and you can say, is there any show I want to delete? We can delete the one we created before. We can say delete, and it's gone. Up here we have the internal button. As I showed you before, you can see all the different options you have here. But let's say we take a USB stick and we put it in our computer, if I can find the proper way to do that. Now I put in a USB stick on my computer, and that works exactly the same way on a real console. You have the internal up here. If you attach any USB sticks and you press and hold this guy, you can see now this one, GrandMA3/2 or whatever it's called, is my USB stick, and you can see all the show files I have on my USB stick. And it works the same way if you want to create a backup of something. Let's say we have our new show now. I want to store that into my USB stick. I go over here, so I'm on my USB stick, and I just save to this file here. You can see it's saved the show, and now the show is also saved to my USB stick. Another way of creating a backup is if you go into your command section here. You have your menu button. If you double click that one, in real life anyway, it's going to create a backup here. Double click on the menu button is the equivalent of using the backup key on the GrandMA2 console. So a quick double click and you have a backup file. If you want to load backup files, they are not in the same way as, they don't work in the same way as your normal files. We are now on our internal here. If we go in and we want to load something, we have our shows and we have internal. We can click and hold this one and we can find our backup shows, and you can see it automatically takes a backup here if you set it up for automatic backup. You can go in here and you can say autosave to internal. You can click and hold this one, and you can say I want to create a backup every 5 minutes, 15, 30, 60, and so on. It's up to you how you want to do that. I think usually I have a 15-minute auto backup attached to my shows. So this is basically how you can create new shows. This is how you can load new shows. This is how you can store something to a USB stick. And you can also load from USB sticks and stuff like that. And you can also, if you have used the auto backup is a library by itself. So if you double tap the menu button, it will automatically make a backup of your show, and it will be in the backup folder. So it's not mixed in with your other stuff. The next thing I want to briefly touch is something called session. Session is like a way where the console is like determining if it's master or if it's something else is master. You can network all this stuff together. Network is a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial, but just know that if you are in an environment and you want to go in and play with the network, you have the network tab here. You can click this one and you can see here is my computer. This is the session that is running right now. This one is green, which means the session is right now running. If you click this one, so now it's red, there's no session running. If I want to change something in here, I can change which connector I want to have my MANet on. This is not something you want to do if you're just starting out with GrandMA3, but it is something you will use later when you start networking computers together or consoles together or using processing units and all this stuff. So just know it's here. We have our priority here if we want to change the station priority. If we network stuff together, if we have two consoles, only one of them can be the master console, and only the master console will handle ArtNet and some of the streaming ACN stuff, and it's only one of them who is transmitting some of these protocols. So it's always quite important to know which one of your console is master. We have other things here. We can change the session name. Right now it's called Light. I can call it my session. And compared to GrandMA2, where a session would be a number, it would be session 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we simply have a session name, and then we have a host name, which is basically how we identify ourselves on the GrandMA3 MA3 network. So if I network something together, I can try that. I have a cable here. I should be able to put it into my switch under the table here. And then if we wait a few seconds, you can see a lot of stuff pops up, which is my GrandMA3 Lite console over here. It's another OnPC session over here. It's a processing unit. It's two nodes over here. And all these things pop up here, and we can make them make it part of our session. So if I wanted to invite this console over here, I would be able to create my session. As soon as my session is running, I have the ability to invite other stations into my session. And you can see the Lite console, and you have invite station. I can say invite station, and it's going to invite it on the network. So now this console is part of the same show as we have over here. I have an OnPC over here in the background. I can invite that one as well, and it goes into my session, and you can see it loads the show, and this is how sessions work. Again, a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial. Just know that you have all this network stuff in here. You can network everything together and it works seamlessly. You can have different users on different consoles, which means you can program simultaneously on different consoles without interfering with each other. Let's just invite the last stations here just to make sure we have everything in our network. And working with the console, it doesn't matter if you have all this stuff on. The only thing I want to show you, if you go in here and open our, where did we find it, our playback section, you can see I have one fader which is assigned to our new show. It's automatically assigned. If I start moving that one, this fader over here is actually now going up and down because we are in session together. We are the same user, so right now I can remote control everything over here. So that is how sessions work. I know it's a very quick tutorial about sessions. One thing you need to know about is IP addresses. You can find everything in the manual about how that works. And you also have like the options of looking at the network. Do we have any network problems? Session slots and all this stuff. It might seem complex. And one thing I want to say about GrandMA3 is it doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to use all this stuff. It is enough just to have one computer and one OnPC or one console, and you can start learning the software. Once you learn the software, you will be needing to solve problems, and then you will progress as a programmer or also handling the MA3 system. So it looks complex. Don't use it if you don't want to. In the beginning, there's no need to. After all the system run through and looking at software and everything, all the boring stuff, we can start with some of the fun stuff. Now we could look at patch, how we patch fixtures into our show and start creating our own show from scratch. The first thing you want to do, if you want to patch something, you go up into the menu button up here and you have patch. If you click the patch menu, you come into the patch. And I have turned these guys off. They might be on when you do it for the first time. I just want to explain what it is first. The first one here is the MA library. It's MA2 converted show files and MA3 files from the official MA library. Basically, you will find many things in here. All the MA2 show files you usually used in your GrandMA2 programming will be in here, and you will find most of it in here. If you want to look at something, you can click it, and you can click it, and you can click it here, and you can go into the description, and it will tell you a little bit more about the show file. In this case, you can see it's a GrandMA2 show file. It will work just fine. It will have some limitations in 3D, but in real life, DMX output wise, it'll work just fine, just like you're used to on GrandMA2. If we close this guy and we open the next one, this is like user things. If I have put something into my show file at an earlier point, I can find them in here. All kinds of different things that I might have imported or put into my show file. If we close this one, you have the last one here. And this only works if your PC or your computer is online. This is a direct access into the GDTF share library or the MA share library. And here you can go straight in. This is an online library, which is quite cool. If you are missing a fixture from one of the other libraries, you can go in here and find all the online stuff. I try to use it as much as I can because you can see who built it, where did it come from, and you have a rating down here for other users to have rated this fixture profile. Fixture profile is great. Fixture profiles are great, but they can be built the wrong way, and that can create problems for you. So sometimes, even though manufacturers create GDTF profiles today, they will still come out with a lot of problems sometimes. But it's getting better and better and better all the time. But just know that if there's something not working, it could be the fixture profile itself that has a problem. But if we are up here in the online library, if you are on a console, a real console, and it's not connected to the internet, you won't have this option. You can connect all these GrandMA3 consoles to the internet. We're not going to cover how that works in this tutorial, but just know that you can connect one of the connectors in the back, connect it to a router, and then you will be, if it's online, if it's allowed to go through your network to the internet, this will also work on a real console. Just know that if you at some point need to change that. But let's say we want to patch something, and we are in the online library. I can search for maybe margin here, and we can search for Viber, we can search for XIP, which is a relatively new fixture, and you can see it pops up in a few different modes here. We have a Viber XIP, we have basic, we have extended, we have ludicrous. It does say it has a DMX footprint of 9, which I don't really believe. But let's put it into the extended mode. You can see here the source is the GDTF share library, the online library. You can see some of the other nodes here. And you can see it actually gets a 5-star rating. So maybe it's a good profile. We try to do it. We say select, and it's going to download the fixture profile onto your computer and be ready for patching. When you're patching something, you can see the mode here, you can see the name, and you can see the suggested name it has for this fixture profile. You can give it your own name if you want to. You can just call them Spot 1 if you want to. You can also see some of the predefined suggestions for you over here. You can just click this one and it's going to change the name to Mac Viber XIP. And if you give it a number afterwards, it's going to auto increment when you have done your patching. The quantity down here is how many do you want to patch. In our case, let's just say 12. And we are asked about a fixture ID. If you haven't worked with GrandMA3 before, you might be unfamiliar with the concept of fixture ID. Fixture ID is a unique number for every fixture in the software. So you can always say fixture ID 1, please, and then you will be directed to the fixture ID number 1. For some reason I always call my profile 701 and up, that is all my profile moving light spots, and I'll do that in this case as well. And then we are asked about where do we want to patch it. It's suggesting universe 1 address number 1, which is fine. If you want to change that, you can say universe 2 address number 1. That's all up to you how you want to patch it and where you want to patch it. Let's just say 1.1 again, universe 1 address number 1. We say please and we say create down here, and it now created all these fixtures, and you can see because we gave it a number of 1, it names it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and so on. We also have the fixture ID here, and if you just drag along here you can select all of them, you can right click and you can give it a new name if you want to, or a new fixture ID. You can always change this stuff. You can see the fixture type is the Mac Viper XIP here, and you can also see its mode. If you are on a GrandMA2 or some other consoles, most other consoles, if you want to change the mode, you need to change the fixture profile entirely. On GrandMA3 that works a little bit different, because on the GDTF fixture profiles, the modes are built into the fixture profile. So even though I have selected my extended mode here, I can drag it down here, right click, and I could basically just take one of the other modes if I wanted to, and that will change the mode of the fixture. That is really helpful, I think. Let's put it back into extended, and then we can look at the other things here. You can see if you want to invert the DMX, the way the DMX sends out to the pan and tilt, you can do that, and you can also invert the encoders. So if you scroll one way and the fixtures go one way, you can actually invert that as well. There's a lot of other possibilities to change stuff in here, like the position in X, Y, and Z in 3D space. You can look at their rotation, you can look at their scale, you can do all kinds of different things in here. Usually when you patch, I usually just use this condensed view, but you can use whatever you want, and you can see a lot of details in here. Once we have patched this stuff, we can say, okay, are we done patching? Do we need to patch something else? I usually patch in groups, and that's a new thing in GrandMA3 compared to GrandMA2. If you have used GrandMA2, you will remember we had layers for all the different fixture types. It kind of works in a different way now in GrandMA3. We still have some stuff up here. We can go up into the split view, and then we have different ways we can look at our different things. If we go into our full here, we can see we can look by DMX universe, we can filter by different stuff, we can look at ID types, we can look at layers and classes, which is also new in GrandMA3 compared to GrandMA2. If you import files and from the MVR library, MVR files, you can import layers and classes as well. That will give you other options. We're not going to cover that in this tutorial. Just know it's there. So let's say we have all this stuff patched, and we want to set it up in 3D. We can do that, and we can also group it. So let's just start by patching a group. We go into library and we search for group, and we have, I need to go back into my libraries here, so we have everything. You can see grouping up here. It's a GrandMA3 thing, and we can just select a group, and we can patch, let's say, 4 groups. We can call them 1001. If I had my numeric keypad on. There we go. And we say create, and now we created 4 groups. You might patch groups at some point, and then as soon as you patch them, they're gone. And that is because you might have hide environmental on up here. Environmental, if you patch like musical instruments and set pieces and all this stuff, will also be in your patch, and they will be considered environmental objects. So not to clutter your patch, you can actually hide all the environmental objects up here. And a group is an environmental object until it contains fixtures, like real lighting fixtures. So just know if you patch your fixtures and they disappear, that is because they are right now environmental. But this one we can rename. We can call it Viper. Now we called it Viper, and we can open it up. There's nothing in it. We want to put our Vipers in, so we select all of them. We say cut, they turn into red stuff here. We go into new fixtures in our Viper group. We say paste. And do you want to keep the fixtures absolute position rotation in 3D? Yes, yes. We want to do that, and now they are inside a group. So we just saw before when we hit the environmental objects that all the groups went away. But if I do it now, you can see the Viper stays here. The Viper group stays here. And that is because it's containing fixtures. It is no longer an environmental object, and that is why it stays here. You don't have to use all these groups. You don't have to do that. I just find it easier because we now have this tree structure in GrandMA3 where we can open and close different items. But let's say we want to patch something else. We want to patch some auras in a group. We want to patch some blinders maybe. And we want to patch some mega points. We'll do that at a later time. You can see now I have all these groups. They don't contain any information, but we just prepared them so we can patch. Because we can patch directly in a group instead of cutting and pasting. So we have the auras here. We have new fixture inside the aura group. We can right click that one, go into our library here, and we can search for aura XIP, for instance. We can make sure that we are on the online library alone. We can go into Martin Professional, Aura XIP. I don't know, we just take one of them, the compact one. We can go into the description and see the rating. It's a 3.5 rating. It's a 5-star rating here. So we'll just use that one. We select the compact one. It's going to download the show file and we are ready to patch. Once again, let's change the name. We give it a number so it auto increments. We want to patch 12. We want the fixture ID to be 601. And we want to patch it at universe 3.1 just because we can. So we say create, and now we actually created a new fixture type here, the auras inside our library. And again, hide environmental. Now the aura group is no longer environmental. Let's see if we can patch some blinders in here. Oops, I just want to make sure I'm in the right spot here. Let's go and search for, we can search for rocks. We can look at the description down here and we can see the rating. Let's see if we can find a good rating of something. We have a 5-star rating on this one, B4. No, we don't want the B4, we want the B2 version. No rating, 2-star, 2-star, 2.1, let's take this one. We find the 10-channel basic RGB. We say select. It downloads the fixture profile. We give it a new name. We can call it Rocks 1. We can give it a quantity of 12 again. Fixture ID of, we could call it 801. We can make sure it's on 4.1. We can say create, and now we created all our blinders here. The last thing, our mega points. Let's go in here, insert new fixture. We search for mega point. Oops, if I could spell. There we go. We find rope lighting, mega points. We look at the description, no rating, but apparently they might work as well. Let's try the mode 1, 16-bit. We say select, download the fixture profile. We once again say 12. We give it a fixture profile number, fixture ID of 501. We patch them at 5.1. We say create, and now we actually created them as well. So now we patched our fixtures, and one really important thing in GrandMA3 is to set it up in 3D, because the 3D, all the position information in the 3D will help us later when we start creating phasers and all kinds of different things, layout views and all this stuff. So having it set up in 3D will help you. You don't have to do it, but it is very, very helpful. So if you in any way can, make sure that you set your stuff up in 3D, because it will help you. And we'll get into why that is helpful later in the video. So right now, let's just set it up in 3D. I will show you how it works. Up here, inside the patch, you have Show 3D Positions. If you open this guy up and you open it up so we have a little bit more space, we can see our 3D window. This is our 3D space. We can, other places in the software, change the size and all this stuff. We can change how much light there is in there. We can do all kinds of things. But right now we just want to set up our fixtures so we are creating like a festival environment. So we can go into the Vipers, we can select all the Vipers, and now you can't see them because they are below the floor. They are actually selected. You can see down here we have dimmer, position, color, beam, all this stuff which we use when we program. But if you see all this stuff down here, as soon as I press this window with a small click, it changes to X, Y, and Z position and rotation down here, which we will need to set this stuff up. So right now I selected all my Vipers. As I told you, you can't see it, but as soon as I take my mouse and hover over this one and I use the roll wheel in the center, I can set it up into, in this case, 6 meters of height, and we are ready. It looks like only one fixture, but it's actually 12 fixtures in the same position right now. What we can do is we can move it around all we want. We can move it on all these positions, and if we moved it the wrong way, we can just click this one and set it back to 0. I will do that here as well. And then we can go into this one called Align. If you press and hold Align, it will pop up with all the different options you have in Align. And Align is something where you can align something from one fixture this way, from one fixture that way. I'll show you how it works in a second. You can do it towards center, away from center, and stuff like that. The one I usually use is this dash here. If I click this one, and if you're used to MA2, this one is new. It will work the way you expect these other ones to work. In MA2 you only had, or you had these two and these two up here. This one is new to GrandMA3, but if you click it, it's active, and I start rolling my X, you can see it rolls out. Right now it's from -6 to +6 meters, so that is 12 meters width here in the 3D space. So let's close the Viper group here and open the Aura group. We can do exactly the same thing. We can set that up to 6, not 6 meters, 5.5 meters maybe. We can use the Align button here, and we can align them all the way out like this to 6 and 6, -6 and 6, and then maybe we can move them a little bit backwards, maybe 1 meter back, so they're not in the way. Maybe put them down to 5 meters like this. I mean, you don't have to be precise or anything, but having it set up in 3D will help you, as I told you before, with your phasers and stuff like that later. And it's amazing how helpful this is. But let's continue. We take our blinders, all our rocks is here. We select all of them. We take them up again. We can put these guys up to 6.5 meters maybe. We can go into Align here, and we can spread them out also -6 to +6 meters. The last thing is our mega points. We can select all our mega points. They are also below the floor. We can take them up a little bit, and we want them to be on the floor, so we need to flip them around somehow. And you can do that down here on rotation on your X, Y, and Z axis. Let's take our X axis here, and we can simply just rotate it 180 degrees like this, and then we can set it back down to 0, and that should be standing on the floor right now. You can zoom in and have a look, and you can see it looks like it's standing on the floor, and that is the whole point. Let's go into Align, and again we can align it out from -6 to +6 meters. So now basically we took all our Vipers and Auras and everything in our patch, and we positioned everything in 3D, and we can basically now exit the patch. We haven't changed anything in the show file yet. The change only happens when you exit the patch. So when you close this window, it's going to ask you, do you want to save and exit? Do you want to discard and exit, or do you want to stay in the patch? So obviously we want to save what we've done because we are very happy about the results. We can say save and exit. We exit everything, and now we have actually patched our fixtures. If you go up here into fixture, you can see our fixture sheet up here where we can go in and see everything we patched. We can go into presets here and we can start defining our groups. We will do that in a minute. We can go into our sequence sheet if we had anything going on here. And we can go into phasers. We're not using phasers right now. And we can also go into 3D. And you can see everything we created inside the patch is now part of our 3D window. And one thing is you can just use your 3D window to select fixtures. You can go down to the add button here and clear. You can select other fixtures. That's fine. And this can be useful when you are creating groups and stuff like that. If you want to select every second, you can do it this way. It's not the most efficient way, but you can do it this way if you want to. So the 3D can be quite useful also when you program. One thing I want to show you is show label on body, because right now we have fixture for the Vipers 701 to 712, but we might have flipped it around. We don't know that yet, but we can go in and show label on body, and you can see 801, 701, 601 and 501 down here. So we know my preference anyway is from left to right. So 501 and all this the way around here. If you want to change something, if you say, oh, I want to move these guys, you don't have to go back in the patch. You can just go into setup here and you see the same settings here, and you can select all your fixtures and you can move them on the y-axis or stuff like that. You can do all kinds of different things. But yeah, you can change everything in here as well. You can also show label on spot, which I actually find quite cool. If we hide the other one here, let's say we want to turn on our auras here, we can do that down here, and you can actually see, if I go in and move them around, you can see the footprint of the different fixtures, where they hit the floor or where they hit something. And if you are in like a theater environment or programming what fixture is doing what, then if you turn this on, you can actually see where each fixture is hitting the floor or hitting the surface. I think that is really cool. After everything is patched, I just want to show you something we call Swipeys, which is a new addition to GrandMA3. It is not something we had in GrandMA2 or GrandMA1 for that matter. If we have something, you've seen it down here, I can drag it out and I can show all these options here. And I said you can press, let's just clear this, you can press and hold something and that will open up some options. You can also click and drag away from it, and that will also open up the options. And that goes if you want to save something. You can press a preset up here, you can press and drag it away, and then you can actually store something up here. Now there's nothing in it, but then again you can do this, you can move it somewhere else, you can delete it again, you can go into the settings, you can go in and assign it somewhere. This is just a new shortcut to do something, and the first time I saw it I was like, that's not something I'm going to use, but I use it all the time, especially on OnPC. I don't use it as much on a real console. Well, I do use it definitely, but not all the time, because I have all my command section and all my buttons and everything there. But especially on OnPC, it's really valuable to do so. It's the same if you press store down here. You can also store something new. You can go into your command section, you can say store down here, and you can store something next to it. You can use your Swipeys again to delete it, and that's Swipeys. So use Swipeys and see where you can use it. You can use it in many different places of the software. If you have a preset bank with a lot of different options in, you can press and hold it, and it works everywhere in the console. Every time you have more than one option, you can press and drag, and then it will show you the options you have in that specific place. So after everything is patched, it's now time to start looking at our windows, our screens, and start configuring them the way we want. As I mentioned earlier, you have all these predefined views from MA. They build all these different views for us to use compared to MA2 and MA1. They came without any predefined views, so MA3 comes with some predefined views. You can use them or you can build your own. For the sake of this tutorial, I would like you to build your own, because it's very important that you know how you can open windows, close windows, and all this stuff. The first thing I want to show you though is the way we can configure our display. If you click the menu button, you can see this display. It opens up on all screens. So it actually matters if you click Configure Display on this screen, or if you use it on screen 2, you have the same option of Configure Display. Those things are important, and it's related to the screen where you actually clicked on Configure Display. So you see this pop-up box here, it will open up on all the screens you have attached to your OnPC or to your real console. It's the same thing. If we go into Configure Display, you see we have some options in here. The Show title bar will simply show and hide this Windows bar up here. So if you are using OnPC as your console in real life, you can hide this one when you are in full screen mode, and that is really cool. The control bar over here, you can see this bar over here opens and closes. You can also click this small arrow down here to do the same thing. On an OnPC, you use this control bar over here all the time. On a computer, on a real console, you don't use it. You can still open and close it, but you don't really use it on a real console. You have the view bar over here, which is all our views. You can open and close this one. You can even expand it so you have 3 rows of views instead of just 1. That's up to you. You can also put it in the top instead of having it all the way in the right side here. Again, it's up to you how you want to work. You have the command line. You can see here you have this admin fixture line. If you hide this one, it's going to go away. But my recommendation is you keep your command line, because you, once you start to progress as a programmer, you use it all the time to all kinds of different things. And then at the end you have the encoder bar here. You can see all our controls go away. You can turn it on or off here, and you can also turn on and off the playbacks over here, as I also showed you before. So this is Configure Display. One thing I want to mention is you can see we have a width and a height here. The width and the height is depending on what screen you're on. If you are on a computer and you have an HD display like I do here, 1920 by 1080, it looks like this. If you are on a 4K screen, you will have options of making it bigger than this, and you will have a lot of room on your screen. But on a console, if you are using this as a pre-programming, using the OnPC for pre-programming, when you come out on a real console, you are limited on the space you have on your in your display here. So you can see right now I have a width of 24 and a height of 11. In reality, this is on a full size and light console, 18 wide and 10 high, like this. And you can see if you punch in these numbers, we're going to gray out the other part of the screen. And that is a help for you if you want to make sure that everything you do here actually fits on the screen on a real console. So just be aware that on OnPC you can use a lot of space, but when you come out on the real console, then you can't utilize this space because the screen is not big enough for that. If you by mistake make it wider than you have room for on a real console, if this one is bigger, for instance, you can use 3 fingers on the screen. You can take 3 fingers and then you can move the image around on the real console to make sure that you can rescale and resize everything again. So that is a benefit of GrandMA3 and the gestures. So once again, this is our configure display over here. We can also change the scale from 0.75 as it was before to 1, depending on how what screen you're on again. In this case I use 0.75 because that will give us the most space, and for the sake of this tutorial I want to use all of the space here so I can have as many things open on the screen at once as absolutely possible. So that is how you configure your displays on GrandMA3. The next thing we're going to talk about is how you can create windows, because we have screens, as we talked about before, screen 1, 2, 3, and all the other external screens and the small screens on the real consoles. But we have, in each screen, we have windows. And this 3D view here is a window. The camera pool up here is also a window. And if you want to define your own windows, It's very helpful for you to know how to do that, because you will need that in the future of using GrandMA3. So if we want to clear this screen for all this stuff here, we can press one of the empty slots over here. You can also go up into the MA button up here and delete a window. Now it's gone. But if you are somewhere and you need a blank screen because you want to create your own view, you can simply just click an empty button here, and that's going to clear the screen for you so you can build your own. So we want to start building our show here, and the first thing I think we should create is a 3D view so we can see what is actually going on in our programming. And you can see I can drag this one around here. I can also click somewhere here and I can open something, and you can see it opens it up from where I clicked it and the rest of the screen. If I close it again, if I press the center somewhere and I add it here, you can see it opens from where I clicked the screen and then to the right and down as much space as it can take. You can also define it by opening a square like this, and then you will see it limits itself to that. So that is one way you can build your windows. But let's say we open our 3D view up here. Let's make it this big. You can see you have your 3D view here. Let's say we want a playback bar down here. You can see I have my playbacks here. And then this is representing the faders of a real console. You can see I have 5 faders here, 3 banks of 5, and that is exactly the same as a GrandMA3 Lite. It has 5 faders 3 times, so 15 faders in total. You can go up into this MA button and you can say I only want to see maybe one section, and that is only showing us 5 faders. You can show 2 sections, that is going to show us 10 faders, and so on. So this is how the playbacks work. This is how you define the playbacks. Let's just make it a little bit bigger here. Then you can see all these buttons here, 101, 201, you have 301 and 401 up here, and that is where you can assign stuff into your playbacks and have faders and buttons and all that stuff, and we're going to come back to that. But to build our own view, the first thing I think we need is a view where we can, or a window where we can select our groups. So what I can do now is I dragged it out, so now I just need to find my groups. And if you don't know where stuff is, you can go into the All tab here and you can simply search for group, and then you can click this one, and then that's going to open a group window. I showed you the grouping in the patch, and we have groups here. These two are not the same thing. Groups in patch is a fixture you can use. Groups here is the way that it normally works, where you can store a fixture selection into a group. But let's say we want to continue here and we want some intensity here. We can go into presets and we can say dimmer. That's going to open a option of some dimmer presets here. Let's take the next one. That could be position. We have room for some positions here. We can take the next one. That could be gobos. We also have room for some gobos. Maybe we limit this one to only have 4 inside, and maybe we can move this one up here to save some space. The next one after gobo could be color. The next one could be beam. And the last one we're going to open here could be focus. One thing I want to show you is, I mean, we use quite a lot of space here, and sometimes you have a lot of groups and you would have maybe a lot of positions, a lot of gobos, gobo rotation, all kinds of crazy stuff. You can use something called a dynamic preset, and that is quite cool actually. If we open this up and instead of all these predefined ones, we select the dynamic one, and you can see it has these brackets around it, which means it's like interactive, it's dynamic, it can actually change. So the dimmer here is exactly the same as the dimmer here. So if I store something here, you can see it also pops up down here. And the cool thing about a dynamic preset is if I change my preset to something else, if I click the position, it changes to the position preset. If I click gobo, color, beam, it changes with the feature groups down here. So if you want to save some space, you can definitely use this one and simply just say, okay, now I want position, select the position. Now I want to give it a gobo, select gobo. That is the dynamic preset. We delete this one and we open one more. This one could be our alt group 1, and we open alt group 2, and I will show you later what they do. It's also a preset type, and we can use them and utilize them later. So this is how we can define a view. And we just defined it, and the only thing we need to do now is to save it. Because right now we have just defined a view, we haven't stored it anywhere. So what I can do is go down here, I can say store, and then I can give it a name. I can say program, like this. And now we have defined a new view. So if I create an empty screen, I can always recall the view we just made by clicking this button here. So this is how you can define your own view. We have a 3D, we have our playbacks, we have our groups, and we have all of the presets we need later in this tutorial. So let's continue with the next big thing. Now we defined everything, we have our 3D, and usually you would select some fixtures and you could store that into a group up here. We could give it a name, and that would be, if I clear this stuff here, then I can select them, and now I have created a group. You can also create your groups in another way. You can go into something called the Show Creator in here. If you press the menu button, go into Show Creator, you can see we have a possibility of importing stuff. We can export stuff, we can create groups, we can create presets, we can do all kinds of things in here. If you are in Create Group and you select these 4 groups, they see that straight from the patch. We can say I want it to start at my group number 1, and I can create my alt groups, and then it just wants me to confirm the name or change the name if I want to. And now you can see I created 4 groups. If I close this one down, you can see now I have all these groups which I didn't have before. So you can select a row of fixtures and you can store that into a group like this, or you can go into the Show Creator and do the same thing. You can also, if we delete this again, go back into the Show Creator and say I want all my XIPs. I want it to start at number 5, but I want to create single groups, I mean 1 group per fixture. If I click this one, it's going to create 1 group per fixture in this fixture type I have selected down here. Let's say oops for this and go back and have a look. Now we created the 4 groups we need to get started, and we can start by programming something into our all our preset pools here, because our presets is basically where we set up our building blocks we need for programming later. So instead of me having to manually turn the dimmer on every time or put the fixtures into a position, we store the fixtures into presets so we can recall them later, and we can easily change them later also if we want to make some sort of correction. So if we clear this, I can take all my Viper XIPs here. I have my dimmer down here, and I can turn up the dimmer all the way to 100 if I want to. I can also press the Add button down here and say full, and then I can store this into a preset, and that is really cool. I can also turn it off here down to 0, and I can store this into the next one. So now, as you can see, I have 2 presets, one that is turning everything on at full, and one that is turning it on at turning it off at 0%. So let's label these ones. Let's say 100%, and let's say 0%. Oops, what did I write here? 0%. There we go. So now we have created 2 presets, one for full and one for off. And if you notice this small U up here, the U is universal, which means that this feature on and off will work on any fixture in our show. So we saved it for our XIPs. If we take our mega pointies here and we press the on button, you can see they also turn on down here. So the universal means that it will work on any fixture. And it's very few things that can be universal. You cannot have a position that is universal, because depending on where the fixture is positioned, a universal preset will never work, because it's the same value, and you never want the same value for position. You want individual positions for all the fixtures. So that's why a universal position is not a good idea. And you can see here we have a small s, which stands for selective, which means that anything you store in here in your position will be selective. That is only that only carries value for the fixtures you use to create this position. So if I take my Vipers here, I can turn them on, I can go into position, I can point them towards us, and then I can store this into our position here, and you can see the small s up here. That means it only carries the values for the fixtures used to create this preset. So if I select my auras here, you can see it's gray, because it doesn't hold any value for these fixtures. But I can turn these guys on if I want to, give them sort of the same position. I can do the same for the mega points, turn these guys on, and then I can put them down on the floor or something like this maybe. And then now I have information for this group here and for this group. I can store this and merge this into the same position. So now this one contains information for all three, because I saved information in all three of them. And this is how it works with our position preset and selective information. But let's just continue with this. We made one position. Let's just make 2 more. Let's say we take our Vipers and these guys here, we put them into position number 1. If you remember when we did our 3D setup, we used the align here. If I once again set this to align and I pan, this, you can see it fans out. Now my selection is too many fixtures, I just want to do it for one at a time. I take my Vipers into the first one here, I select the align button here, you can see I can now fan it towards center or away from center. Let's do the same thing for the auras here. We turn them on, we fan them out a little bit like this. It's kind of hard to see. We do the same thing for the mega points. We also go into fan here and we fan them out like this. And this could be our second position like this. So we store this. We can call this position 1. We can call this position 2, or state position 1, state position 2, whatever you want to call it. Let's take our Vipers here and we have them in position 2. We can put them up towards the camera maybe. We can do the same for the auras, if I can see them. And we can do the same for the mega points. Like this, we can store a position here called ODNs, like this. And we can take our Vipers again, put them all the way up in the air. We can do the same for the auras, and we can do the same for the mega points, like this. And then we can store another position, and we can call this air. So now we have 4 positions, 2 on stage, 1 in the audience, and 1 up in the air. And that is our first position preset. Everything is now set for that. Let's play with the gobos. We take our Vipers again, we put them in position 2, we turn them on, and we have our gobos up here. We can go into the gobo bank here, and we can start by selecting some gobos in the channel sets. We select an open one, we store that here. We can select another one, we can store that here, and you can see it pops up with the right gobo. We can do it with the last one as well. And you can see this small yellow G here. And G means it's a global preset. Right now I used 12 fixtures to store this gobo preset, or store these 3 gobo presets. In the future, if I patch 100 XIPs for some big show I need to do somewhere, I do not have to update these ones because they are global. And global means that any information they contain from one specific fixture type It doesn't matter how many fixture types you have. If you have a global preset, it will work on all of them, which is kind of nice. So that's the global one. We can do the same with the gobo for the mega points. Let's just put them on audience 1 here maybe. Let's go into gobo. Let's store an open gobo. We merge that in. Let's store another gobo and merge that in here. And let's store a third gobo and merge that in here. And now you can see it's still global because that contains information from 2 fixture types. So again, if I patch more mega points in the future, it will know these 2 gobos and it will know the open gobo. And you can see the icon changed because now we have 2 different gobos in here, and it only can display one of them for us. So that's how that works. We clear this stuff, and now we can take our XIPs again, put them into a position, and we want to see a little better because it can be hard to see in this 3D. So we click the icon up here, we take the point light a little bit down, we take the ambient light a little bit down, we can even change some of the gobo here. We can set that to gobo animated maybe. That gives us a little bit better graphics. We can turn the beam up a little bit like this, and now we can go in and play with color. And color lives down here. You can, here you have RGB, you can start turning this all you want and create your own colors. You can also open what is called the special dialog. We can go in and we can search for special dialog here. And here you have a color picker, and you actually also have shapers here. If you want to use shapers or blades, you can easily use that in here in the special dialog. It's actually quite a cool toy. So reset everything here. We go into color. We can mix our own colors into this color picker. We can also go into the other color picker here if you want to prefer this one. We can also go into faders here and work with cyan, magenta and yellow, or over here we can work with RGB. And the last one is book. So if you are my age, you probably worked a lot with Lee colors and Roscoe colors and stuff like that back in the day. You can go in and you can find the Lee library in here, and you can just find a color that you remember. It could be 106, which is the primary red one, and you can also use that to create your colors. It's all up to you. But let's go into the color picker here, or the fader. That's up to you. Let's just make them all white. Store this into the first one. Let's make them cyan like this. Store that into the next one. We give it magenta. We say yellow. We say green. We say red. We can maybe do a blue like this, and we can have an amber color of some sort like this, and that could be our colors. It's a good idea to name all your presets because I'll show you later why that's important, but that gives the console a reference to what it is you're doing, and then it can actually help you display this information in a cool way. So let's call this white, cyan like this, magenta like this, yellow, green, red, blue, and amber. So now we named all our colors. Maybe I did something wrong here. Yeah, like this. So now we named these guys. We can continue on and create some beam. We take our Vipers again, turn them on in some sort of position here, and we go down to beam and say, what do we want to work with here? We have our iris here, and you can say, I have 4 layers of beam information here, and you can easily go through them like this. You have our prism, we have some effects in here, some more effects, some raid stuff, but let's just use the iris. We can click this button down here, and we can use some of the channel sets. Let's put it to closed. It's all the way closed now, or maybe put it at 25% like this. Nah, let's just close it a little bit more to make it really narrow. We can store this. I want to store this here, and we can set it back to normal or open, and we can store this here. So we can say iris open, and we can say iris closed. So that's our beam. Let's look at focus. We clear this stuff again. Not that we really have to, but we do it anyway. We go into focus, and we have the option of focusing on a gobo or focusing on the beam. If you have zoomed it all the way in or something like that, you can use the focus here, and we can, in this case, just use the zoom. Let's put it to narrow. We store this into this one here. Let's put it into medium or normal, and we store that here, and let's put it into wide, and we store that here. So let's say zoom narrow, zoom medium, or zoom wide. So now we created most of our presets here, or almost all of them. As I showed you earlier, we have this called all pool. We have all pool 1, all pool 20, and 21, sorry, and all pool 22, which is all pool 2. If you look at the Vipers here, and I go into position and I give them some sort of position, if I try to store that in the position directory, it will work. But if I try to store it somewhere else, it won't work, because it filters the information. The color only takes information from the color attributes down here. The position only takes information from position, and so on for all of them. But an all pool will take position from take information from anything. So if we say we have our Vipers, we turn them on, we give them a position up in the air, we give them a color of cyan, we zoom them into narrow like this. I can store this into an all pool like this, and you can see these small dots down here. That is a reference to which presets that are inside this preset here. So you can see the first one would be dimmer, the next one would be position, then we skip one, we skip gobo, we go to color, we skip beam, we go to focus. So that's a way you can use this, and then if you select our Vipers here and we press this one, it will recall all of it. So it can be quite useful if you're working with, as I showed you before, the framing shutters. Let's say you want to frame an image on the wall. You use position to get there. You maybe put in some color, some CTO to make it nice and cozy to look at, and then you use all the framing shutters. Then it would be a problem if you had to recall that from 3 or 4 or 5 different preset pools. It's much easier just to store that into one preset pool instead of having to walk around between all of them. So this is one of the things you can use the all presets for. Also, if you create complex phaser effects, which we will get into later, that is also a good idea to store that into all presets. You don't have to do it, but you can definitely do it. So this is how all our presets work. This is how we create all our presets. And now we are ready to start programming, because we now have some of the building blocks we need to start making a sequence. So now it's time to program a sequence. And I just created one here just for the fun of it. We can close this window down because we don't need the color picker anymore. And we can open up our preset pool here. You go into data pools and you go into sequences, a sequence pool. And you can see I have a main song here and a main song there. If I delete this one using my Swipeys, you can see it warns me, it goes away and it's gone. If I store a new sequence, I can go into my command section, I can say store here, and I can press a button, and now I stored a new sequence, and as you can see, it automatically popped up here. If I delete it over here, I can say command section, I can find my delete button up here, and I can press this one, and it's gone, but it's not gone from here. So let's just label this one to main sequence like this. And this could be our first song, or this could be a theater show, this could be whatever. So let's say now we have our main sequence here. We can select it by pressing on it. You can see it has this yellow border, and that means it is selected. Now I can use my swipey. I can say assign, and I can put it back here where it belongs. This is our playback section. It represents our physical faders. And just to show you how it looks, if you make this bigger, you can see this is our first fader, and as this goes up and down, because everything here by me is connected in network, the first fader over here is actually going up and down as well, because we are connected. You can see all the playbacks here, you can see all these playback buttons here, and we are going to look at that in a minute, how we can configure that, how we can use that. But let's make this smaller again, and let's reopen our 3D window so we can see what's actually going on, and we can store this into our program view here as we have done a few times before. So our playback section here consists of a fader. The fader is very small right now. It's actually still active down here. You can't really see it right now because we are using all the space for the 3D window and all this stuff. We can go in here and we can show or hide some stuff, as I briefly touched before. If I click this one, I can not show row 400, and row 400 would be all these buttons up here in this row. 300 is down here, 200 is down here, and so on and so forth. So let's say we have this sequence now. I need to be able to see what's in my sequence. So I can click this empty space here, and I can open my sequence sheet, and it's very crammed here, and I can just close this recipe stuff down here, and you can now see I have Q1. It's gray because there's nothing in it. To store something into Q1, we need to make some sort of change. We can take our Vipers here, turn them on in the air position with a narrow zoom, maybe put them in cyan, and we can say S for store, or we can go in to our command section and say store Q1, and then we can say please, and store Q1 works because the sequence is selected, as I showed you before. This yellow one here means it's the selected sequence. If it's not selected, I can say store sequence 1 Q1, and that is also going to store this into the first queue here. You can see it now contains information. If I say oops to this, I can take it out again, and the oops button is in the command section over here. If you made a mistake, you can press the oops button. You can press and hold it, and that is going to give you a history of all your commands, and you can basically just say, okay, I want to oops all the way up into here, and that is going to delete everything all the changes you made since that move. But here you can see they are on. We can just say S for store, and we can press Q1 and we can merge it in, and you can see it does exactly the same thing. We did not name our queue beforehand, and that is why you can see there's 100%, it's air, it's cyan, and it's zoom narrow. And that's because it takes the names from the presets we used to create this queue here. If we rename it to start queue, all this information is gone. It's just the console helping us out. If we didn't rename the queue by ourselves, it will suggest a name for the queue. If you have beforehand giving all your queues names, it will not do that. So it's only if you haven't given your queues any names that it will suggest what names to be used based on what's in the queue, which is quite cool actually. So we can clear this, and you can see now this one is active. All the fixtures are staying up here because this queue is now active. We have this stuff here. Let's just make this 3D window a little bit smaller again so you can see what's going on. You can see I have my fader here, and that means I can turn them on or off. I have some buttons here which are not active. They're not part of my sequence right now, because I can go into the main sequence and I can define what the buttons do. You can see here I have a Go Plus button. If I click this one and go into handle, you can see I have a Go Plus button here on my playback 201. Over here would be 202 and so on. You also have this row called 300, and if I click this one, you can see now I extended this fader. Now I am utilizing both this button and the fader here, and the next button and the rotary knob here as well. You can see they're both go plus, which is kind of stupid, so I can go in here again and I can call this go minus, and that would mean that I can go forwards and backwards in the sequence if I want to. But right now we only have one cue, so there's nothing to go to. So let's store a cue or some more cues. We can say store cue 2 through 10, and if I could spell cue, that would be an option. So here we go, and now we stored some extra cues. So now we can start programming something. We can delete this one to make this one a little bit bigger, like this. You can see I just double clicked it. It's going to take up as much space as it can. So the first is programmed here. We have defined our buttons, and now I can make this a little bit smaller again so we can see the 3D window, what's actually going on. Double tap this one and we are ready to start working with it. You can see up here this works like an iPhone. I can use one button to the left mouse button to select something using this lasso here. I can clear this stuff. If I press both buttons on my mouse, I can move stuff around like this. I can zoom in and all this stuff, but you can also go over here and do the same thing. If you want to rotate something, you can do whatever over here. You can also go back into front view like this, and it's going to reset the view based on your cameras. So now we have stored sequence number 1, cue number 1, and we have a lot of empty cues down here. So let's say we need some more information in cue number 1. Let's take all our vipers here, our auras, turn them on into a position of some sort. They are very hard to see. I could turn down the, not the point light, the ambient light a little bit and the point light a little bit, and turn the beam up, and that should give us, now it's a little bit easier to see, but it's definitely not perfect. And that's based on the fixture profile, because it's a fixture profile, a GTTF profile. It tries to mimic what amount of light that actually comes out of it. I could probably take these one and put them into zoom wide, zoom now. Nah, it doesn't really help anything. So they're on. It's hard to see, but they are actually on. We can store that into the first cue. We can merge, and we can clear everything, and now they stay on as well. We can also take all our mega points like this, put them down on the stage, turn them on, and you can see now they are also part of this cue. We could even maybe give it a gobo. Let's store this into Q1 as well, like this. And because this is a tracking console, storing something into the first cue, and if you go through the cues like this, you can see nothing happens up here. And that is because it's tracking. And tracking means it's only, you have to apply some sort of change for a change to take place. Otherwise, they're just going to stay there and do whatever you ask them in the last time they got some sort of information. That is how tracking works on GrandMA3. It's a little bit bigger than that, but that's how much I'm going to cover this topic in this tutorial. So everything stays like it's supposed to, and now I'm in Q5. I can go back into cue number 2 and say maybe we want to add some sort of change. We could take our vipers here maybe. We could put them into position maybe number 2 like this, so they fan out just a little bit. We can put them into white, and then we could store this into cue number 2. So we say store to merge, and that suddenly you can see we didn't give it a name, so it's position 2 and white, which is exactly what we did. When we clear this stuff, they stay here. So if we go back like this and go into the next cue, now you can see the change we just made. We can change the fade time in cue number 1 or cue number 2. In this case, let's just give it a fade time of 4 seconds in cue number 2. So if we go back into 1, now everything should take 4 seconds to go into queue number 2, and you can see it fades nice and easy. As you saw, it moved in 2 seconds down to queue number 2, or in 4 seconds, sorry, into queue number 2. We could change it and have separate fade times if we wanted to. We could edit this queue here. We can say edit, and that is going to load queue number 2, our active queue, into the programmer. We can say our Vipers here, they move down, which is fine. We also have a color here, and we can go into fade, and we can give it another fade time. So if I click the color, and we are in this link time called feature, not in single, not in the add filter, but feature. Single would be only one of the colors we touch. Feature would be all colors. So if we press this one here, we can give it a fade time of 1 second, and we can press U for update, and you can see it's flashing. I can click it, and we update this queue here now. So if we go back now, it's still going to fade down in 4 seconds, but the color will be out in 1 second. So let's have a look when we go to the queue. You can see the color is out now, and now it's done fading. Another thing you can do in a sequence is you can use how it transitions, how it starts and stops a movement or a color fade. You can go down to, where do we have? We have transition here. Transition has many different options. You can go into the manual and see what they all do. But this one, S-curve, means that it's going to start slow, speed up, and stop slow again to make a nice move. It's very specifically when you're doing some movement. So let's see now. It starts nice, and then it should kind of break before it stops. And that is the S-curve, something you can change in your sequence like this. So this is how you can store a few queues. There's many things you can do. You can put information into queues, and we're going to do that later on. I just want to show you something else before we continue. Because as I showed you, you can change the function of buttons. There's also many other things you can change in a sequence. You can go into the settings on the selected sequence here. You can see all these different options here. You can also click this guy here and go into edit settings here. And that is the same thing. You can assign a speed master. You can release your first queue or not. You can auto start and auto stop. And you have to start working with the console to know what all this stuff is. I talked about tracking. You can actually disable tracking up here as well. If you don't want it to track, I will highly recommend you use tracking because it's a lot easier to program using tracking. I think anyway, so that depends on where you came from. I think if you're from ETC, you don't use tracking the same way as you do on whole hog, CAMSYS, MA, and other consoles. But just know that in here there's a lot of settings you can play with. You can also go in directly into the sequence here and work with the queues and stuff like that. So that's all the settings per sequence. You have all these settings in every sequence you create. So here we are. We created a few queues. We looked at how we can change the button configurations, how we can expand the sequence to use more buttons or less buttons. And now I think we could look at something called MATricks. And MATricks is useful when you store effects, and if you tap through your stuff in different ways, MATricks is really, really cool. So let's start by saying off, and we can turn off this main sequence and everything turns off. If we select some fixtures like this and we go into our command section and we put them into highlight, you can now see they are on. I can put them into a position, maybe take the position 2 here, and I want to go through them by using next. I can say next like this, and that is going to select the first one. I can say next for the next one, next for the next one, and I can say previous, that's going to go back, previous is going to go back. You also have these buttons on your command section up here, next and previous. You use it all the time when you are making your positions. You are correcting one fixture, next, and the next one, next, correcting it, next, and so on and so forth. the reason why I want to talk about MAtricks is MAtricks can be used for a lot of different things. So let's just clear this stuff again here. Once again, we select them, we put them into a position, and instead of going one by one, we can go into the MAtricks here and we can select a group, for instance, of 1, and then I should be able to go through them one by one. You can see X group is X group of 2 it's dividing everything you selected up into 2 groups, and you can go from one group to the next. You can also make it groups of 3 like this. You can have groups of 4, groups of 5, and so on and so forth. You can go back into blocks, and you can say this is a block of 2. You can have blocks of 3. You can have all the things you want. You can also use wings, and wings will, if you have a selection here, we have 701 through to 712. A wing will give you the 2 fixtures opposite each other in the selection order you made. In this case, it's 701 and 712. You can see that if I turn on the label on body, as I showed you earlier. And if you press next, 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 if I go into my MAtricks again, you can see they are selected. They're mirroring each other, basically. You can use this if you are making positions. Instead of using your positions like this, maybe we need to go in and we need to transform mirror here. You can use this as a way to easier make positions or stuff like that. They are mirroring each other. And there's so many things you can use MAtricks for. Just know it's here. You will definitely use it when you start working with the phaser engine and all this stuff. So we will get into that in a minute, how that works. So let's say that this sequence is a little bit boring for you. It's just static looks and slow fades and stuff like that. We need to do more. We need to make some sort of effect, something that circles around, or something flashing around, or something like that. And for that, we can use our all pool up here. You can see right now in our all pool there's nothing in it, but we can import some predefined effects. So let's go into data pools and macros. Macros is a place where you can automate a lot of different things. I will not really go into macros in this tutorial. There's plenty of videos out there on how macros work. Macros is basically a place where you can store commands and automate a lot of different things. It sounds really complex, but it's really not. It's actually quite simple to work with. But let's go into this one. We go into edit here, and we go into this one called import. And then we search for phaser, like this, and we have this one called import predefined phasers. We say import, and we just close this guy. Now we can, I just want to make this a little bit smaller, this one a little bit bigger. You can see our all pool 1, which we opened earlier. We haven't used it for anything yet. When I click import predefined phasers, you can see it auto-populates with a lot of different phasers. And a phaser is basically some sort of movement or demarches or stuff like that. So we close this macro again. We don't need that anymore. And you can say, okay, now what can we do with it? We can, for instance, select all our vipers here, and we can put them into a chase. And that should, if I exit my highlight here, start oscillating between 0 and 100% without any curve. It's just a square. The one we had, I think it was called PVM on GrandMA2. Now the MAtricks start to be really interesting, because now we have this and it's boring because they're all doing the same thing. We don't want that. We want to make it look funky. So we press the MAtricks here. We have this one called Phase to X. If I click this, I can select 360, and you can see as soon as I press that one, we have something going on. And here again, you can apply groups, dividing it up into 2 groups. As you can see here, we can put our wings of 2, as I showed you before. We can have it in blocks of 2 instead of 1 by 1. We can, as I showed you, the wings here, we can do all kinds of crazy things in here. So basically, you have a phaser where everything turns on and off, everything just does the same thing, and then after that, you apply the MAtricks and make it more interesting. So maybe this one is what we need. We have queue number 4 here. We can basically store this stuff into queue number 4, and we can merge, and then we can clear this stuff. And then if we go into, oops, you can see nothing is happening in Q3. As soon as I go into queue number 4, it's going to start doing that. We can also do the same thing. We can basically turn this off again. If we select all our Vipers here, we can say stomp like this, and everything stops. But maybe that's not what we want. Maybe we have a circle effect going on while it's doing a dimmer effect, while it's doing a color effect. So we might just not want to stomp everything. We can say all our Vipers here, and we can say stomp, and then we can select down here what it is we want to stomp. In this case, I just want to stomp the dimmer, and that's going to stop the dimmer chase, but if we had a circle running at the same time, it would not stop the circle. So let's say we store this into queue number 5, and we merge, we clear, and then it's going to start again, and as soon as we go into queue number 5, it's going to stop. So let's say queue number 6, it could be fun to make another phaser. We take our Vipers again, we go in and we find a circle here, and you can see they start circling. Once again, they are doing the same thing. It's kind of boring. So we can open up here, we can open our MAtricks here, and we can make our own MAtricks. And the MAtricks pool, you can store MAtricks, so you don't have to build them again and again and again. So we go into this one here. We say we want maybe we use the editor instead, and then we can store that into this MAtrick. We use the editor, we phase it to 360 like this. You can see now it looks a little bit more funky. We can, as I said, give it a wing of 2, and we can make sure it transforms, it mirrors, so you can see the fixtures across the middle are doing the same thing, but they are mirroring each other instead of doing the same boring thing. So basically, again, you can put it into blocks, you can put it into groups, you can do whatever you want, and you can manipulate this until you get what you're looking for. You can also shuffle everything by putting in some sort of odd value here, and that is, it's not going to use the wings of 2 now. It's going to be a little bit boring. We can reset it again, and we can basically go back to what we're doing. So let's just build it again. Take our Vipers here, put it into circle, take our MAtricks, phase it to 360, maybe give it a wing of 2 and a transform mirror thing here. And let's say this is something we want to use again and again. We can store this and override this MAtrick here. If I go into the editor, you can see now we applied this stuff here. So instead of doing it manually, we can go into the circle again, and we can just apply the MAtrick, and that is going to do all the stuff we want. Again, we can store this into queue number 7, like this, and we merge, and we clear again, and then I go down to queue number 7, and it starts doing that. Again, if we want to turn it off, we say stomp, and we press the position, it stops everything, and we can store this into queue number 8. That is a very, very quick introduction into phasers. But the reason why I do this is the phaser editor here can be really, really, really complex. If I start something up here and I put it into a circle, and here I go into the phaser here, you can see that it's very complex. You can see that you can do all kinds of things. You can change how it accelerates, how it slows down, how wide an effect is, and all these different things. But my point of using these ones is when you get started with MA3, you don't have to do all this crazy stuff. Start by using the built-in effects. They will get you a long way, a very, very long way before you need to start working with the phaser editor itself. So this is just as an example. So we clear this stuff here. You can see it runs. I go into my stomp queue and it stops. and this is basically how we can work with the built-in or predefined phasers in GrandMA3. Another thing I want to talk about is one of the key advantages of GrandMA3 compared to GrandMA2 and any other lighting console out there, and that is the selection grid. The selection grid is basically the console knowing where every fixture is in 3D space, and that can help you build cool effects and stuff like that, where the phasers are running, where the fixtures compared to each other, in relation to each other. Because you can start a phaser effect like this. Let's say we take and we just off everything here. We say off this, and we select all our Vipers and all our pointies like this. We give them a position of some sort, maybe position number 1. We say dimmer sinus, and we apply an MATricks to phase it to 360. You can see it takes one truss, next truss, one truss, next truss, one truss, next truss, because the selection the console knows right now is you just selected all fixtures in one long row, and it applies the effect on that entire row of fixtures. For that we can use the selection grid, which is a way where the console tells, or where the 3D tells the console where every fixture is positioned. So now we can run phasers where the fixtures are based on each other or in relation to each other. So if we just for a second close the playback bar here and we open something called the selection grid, which is right here, you can see it looks like this. If I take all my Vipers and all my mega points, for instance, you can see it selects them next to each other. And this is when we apply the effect of dimmer sinus like this into MATricks, and we phase it. You can see it just goes through everything like it's one big thing. And it's not, it's 2 trusses. And we might want to have the 2 trusses do the same thing. So what we can do is we can select all these guys again, and you can see in 3D here we have this. It looks like a hashtag, but it's a symbol for the grid. And if we click this one, you can see it now puts it out into the selection grid based on where it sees the different fixtures, where the fixtures are positioned. And if I now apply the same effect and I go into my MATricks and 0 to 360, you can see it now follows each other perfectly. It doesn't see it as 2 different, or one big selection. It sees it as 2 different trusses, which is going to make our effects look much cooler. So let's just try it with another one. We take this one, we put them down into this position here. We apply the chase, and we give it the same phase of 0 to 360. And I, of course, selected 2 wrong groups. Now we have it correct. We put it into the selection grid. We use our chaser instead. We apply our MATricks, and you can see they now follow each other. And you can, of course, do this in GrandMA2 and in any other console, but you would have to think about your selection order, how that works. In MA3, it is so simple to do this. It is so simple to do this. You can see they follow each other because we are running a phaser on the x-axis. You can see phase from x, phase to x. So that's the x-axis. The x-axis goes this way, I mean across. So this is how it works. This is the selection grid. And the cool thing about the selection grid, if you select these guys here, you put them into the selection grid, you can store a group like this. And this group now contains information on my Vipers and my mega pointies. As soon as I press this, you can see it aligns it perfectly in the selection grid. Again, you can apply any effect to that. You can apply a circle to that. You can turn them on. You can put them into a position. You can do all kinds of crazy things with it, and that is gonna look really cool. We can give it the 360 face here. You can mirror it the way you want. I mean, there's so many different things you can do. You can see it's now mirroring these 2. It's now mirroring these 2, so everything is mirrored across the middle. So that is a very brief introduction to the selection grid. It is much more than that, but just know that a selection grid can be extremely helpful in creating phasers and understanding what it does, because it helps you think, it helps you design the effect the way you want it. So that's basically my short introduction to GrandMA3. Based on everything you've seen now, you are able to download the software, look in the manual, patch some fixtures, set it up in 3D, create all your groups, you can create all your presets. You know the difference between absolute information, between universal, global and selective information. You can store a sequence, you can select the sequence, you can change the settings, you can change the button configuration, you can do all this stuff. You can work with cues, you can change the timing, you can change all kinds of things. You can work with phasers, you can start a demo phaser, you can stop a demo phaser, you can start a circle, you can stop a circle, you can do all these things. And this is basically, I would say, what you need to get started. Now you can download the software, do everything at home for free, and that will get you started. And then you will progress more and more and more as time goes by. You will watch more tutorials on YouTube. You are more than welcome to watch other tutorials on this channel, and there's many other people who has made some really cool tutorials for GrandMA3 as well out there on YouTube. So I thank you for watching this tutorial. I definitely hope you're going to give it a like if you enjoyed it, maybe even subscribe to Event Lighting, and you're also more than welcome to leave a comment if you have anything you think is good or you think is bad about this tutorial. More than welcome to leave a comment below. And you can of course also explore the other videos on Event Lighting, and you can do that. And if not, I will see you next time I post a video here on the Event Lighting channel. So thank you very much. See you next time. Bye bye.